A very good morning. It's Saturday, the 24th of November. Our top story. Theresa May's heading to Brussels to attempt to finalise her Brexit deal with EU leaders.
Prime Minister is hoping the plans will be approved at a summit on Sunday, but Spain's Prime Minister has threatened to derail the timetable if he doesn't get further reassurances over the status of Gibraltar.
Well, in a moment, we'll speak to our reporter Gavin Lee, who's in Brussels. First, our political correspondent Leila Nathu is in our London newsroom. Leila, can you just sum up the week Theresa May's had?
Well, she has been on the hard sell of her Brexit deal, given that it has been agreed by the Cabinet, signed off at a technical level, ready to be signed off at a political level in Brussels tomorrow, this weekend. But she is really now focusing on the vote that will be in Parliament, because remember, those agreements, if they're rubber stamped as expected in Brussels this weekend, will have to be approved back in Westminster in Parliament. And so far, there is very little sign that Theresa May has a majority in favour of this deal. She has plenty of opposition from all sides of the House of Commons, including many of her MPs in her own party, the DUP, the Democratic Unionists, Northern Ireland's Democratic Unionists who prop up Theresa May's government in Westminster. They are also unhappy too. So she is trying to appeal directly to the public to say, look, this is the best deal that we're going to get. This is the deal that delivers on the referendum result, in the hope that perhaps people will put pressure on their MPs not to reject it and to avoid that no vote scenario that many think is just uncharted territory if the deal doesn't go through in Westminster.
Leila Nathu, thank you very much. Leila, in London for us.
And let's go straight to Gavin, who's in Brussels for us this morning. So, the Prime Minister on her way once again to Brussels. Clear up a couple of things for us as best you can. Is there going to be tweaking going on today in terms of the deal and the timetable for events across the weekend?
Yeah, so Theresa May's coming here this afternoon to meet the key figures of the European Commission, the European Council, Jean-Claude Juncker and Donald Tusk. She's going through the choreography, we're told, of tomorrow, because this is an extraordinary summit called just for Brexit. It hasn't happened before, and they will endorse the withdrawal agreement, which is a legal text, a divorce agreement, and they will approve the political declaration, the blueprint for the future. So they're approved because it's not legal text, it takes them forward. But Spain, the Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez, saying that there will be no summit if they're not happy on Gibraltar. They want a form of words that they say wasn't in the withdrawal agreement, which guarantees them legally a say in the future on any relationship with Gibraltar. Officially, some of the officials here at the EU say they're surprised by this, perhaps disappointed that it's come to last-minute brinksmanship, but they say they can actually stop the whole thing taking place unless they're satisfied. So I think Theresa May's talks tonight will also involve trying to placate the Spanish.
We'll see what happens. Gavin, thank you very much. That's Gavin Lee reporting from Brussels, as we say. Theresa May on her way there a little later on today.
Yeah, and the leader of the Democratic Unionist Party, meanwhile, Arlene Foster, is expected to reiterate her opposition to the proposed Brexit deal when she addresses its annual conference today.
The DUP is concerned that plans to prevent checks on the Irish border would leave Northern Ireland too closely tied to the EU.
Well, Ireland correspondent Chris Page is at the conference in Belfast for us this morning. What's the mood like there, Chris, this morning? They are threatening to derail Theresa May's plan. Do you think they'll go through with it?
Well, I think it's extraordinary on one level that the DUP are now attracting such major political figures to their annual conference. Last night we had the Chancellor Philip Hammond here trying to sell the Prime Minister's Brexit deal, but I don't think he will have received as warm a reception as Boris Johnson's likely to receive whenever he speaks here at about 2:30 this afternoon. One of the leading Brexiteers, the former Foreign Secretary, has come here, and it's on his side of the argument that the DUP very firmly is right now. They are opposed to the draft Brexit deal because they say Northern Ireland, under the fallback arrangements to prevent border checks on the land frontier with the Irish Republic, would effectively be tied to the rules of the European Union, that it would mean that the rules set for goods in Northern Ireland would be set in Brussels and not in London or Belfast. That's a red line for the DUP. So the message that we're going to get from Arlene Foster in her speech is that the Brexit deal in its current form will not wash with her party. They will vote against it whenever it comes before the House of Commons. And remember, it's the DUP who are at the sweet spot lot of parliamentary arithmetic. It's their 10 MPs who are propping up the government, who have a deal with the Conservative Party to support them in key votes, but all that has been rather strained in recent days because of their opposition to the Brexit deal. So what Arlene Foster is trying to do is persuade the Prime Minister to go back to the negotiating table and get a better deal, and I think you can expect her party members here to be very passionately in favour of that stance here today.
Chris Page, thank you very much.
Climate change will cost the US hundreds of billions of dollars by the end of the century. That's according to a major government report.
It says human health and agriculture are seriously at risk and the poor will suffer most. The White House has dismissed the findings as inaccurate. Here's our North America correspondent, James Cook.
This, say many scientists, is what climate change looks like. In recent years, California has seen bigger, deadlier and more destructive wildfires than ever before. During a cold snap in Washington this week, President Trump tweeted, "Whatever happened to global warming?" Now, his own government experts have answered the question. It's here, they say. Its effects are serious, and without dramatic change, they will be catastrophic. Already, says the report, more frequent and intense storms, like Hurricane Harvey, which ravaged Houston in Texas, are destroying property and may damage critical infrastructure, such as bridges, power plants and oil refineries. Crop yields and labour productivity will decline. There will be a rise in the spread of tropical disease. The poorest Americans will be hardest hit.
One of the things that's quite striking about the report, for example, is that we could see a future where the southeastern parts of the United States experience forest fire seasons that look like what happens in the West right now.
The scientists say substantial and sustained reductions in global greenhouse gas emissions are essential, and they do report some progress. Without major urgent action, says the report, the impacts of climate change will soon cascade into every corner of American life. James Cook, BBC News, Los Angeles.
A police officer has been stabbed in East London. British Transport Police said the male officer was attacked with a knife outside Ilford railway station. His injuries aren't thought to be life-threatening.
The Home Office is investigating how an adult asylum seeker was allowed to take up a place at a school in Ipswich. The man, who was posing as a 15-year-old, enrolled at Stoke High School. It's believed he may be as old as 30 and could now face deportation.
Early reports show Black Friday spending has fallen compared to last year, even though there were more transactions overall. Barclaycard, which is responsible for processing nearly half of all UK debit and credit card transactions, said it had seen a 12% drop in the total spent, and that is compared to the same period a year ago.
A new nasal swab test for flu, which can give a diagnosis in just 20 minutes, has helped to significantly reduce bed blocking and unnecessary admissions in hospitals. It was used in trials at 2 hospital trusts in Norwich and South London and avoids the need to put patients in isolation. Other flu tests can take several days to return results.
The search is on for missing footage of Sir David Attenborough, first aired on the BBC almost 50 years ago.
Staff of the Royal Institution are asking the public to look in their attics for any recordings of their Christmas science lectures, including those by Sir David, after realising 31 broadcasts are actually missing from their collection. Our correspondent David Sillito has the story.
We will have a little protein dance. Okay?
Carl Sagan in 1977 doing the protein dance.
Very good. Can you get a different note on it?
Christopher Zeman and the science of music.
Heart rate 126. You must be calming down, Robert. How do you feel now compared to before? Great.
These lectures have been a Christmas tradition since 1825 and were first broadcast on the BBC in 1936. But not all of them have survived in the archive. Some of David Attenborough's lectures from 1973 have gone missing. There are also gaps in 66, 67, 69, 70 and 71. The Royal Institution was to put all of these televised lectures online and is asking the public if they have copies of the missing programmes hidden in a loft or stored in a garage. They were television's first ever science programme, and they're hoping that some of their technologically inclined viewers might be able to help them complete the full collection. David Sillito, BBC News.
Somebody somewhere will have something.
They will.
It'll
Check your
turn up.
attics.
11 minutes past 9 is the time now. The weather and the sport coming up a little later on. Right now, though, let's turn to one of our main stories this morning and to Belfast, where the Democratic Unionist Party is holding its annual conference.
Leader Arlene Foster is expected to reiterate her opposition to Theresa May's Brexit deal in a speech there later. Well, Sir Geoffrey Donaldson is the DUP MP in Westminster and the party's chief whip, and he joins us now. Good morning. You've made it crystal clear, the DUP have made it crystal clear that backing this deal isn't going to happen. But not backing it means you are risking a hard border, exactly what you do not want.
Well, even the Irish Prime Minister has said in the event of a no-deal outcome there won't be a hard border, so we don't buy that nonsense at all. Even the EU now accept that there are technical solutions to the Irish border issue, so for goodness sake, let's get on with it.
But that technical solution is already detailed in the political declaration. Isn't that enough?
It's not detailed at all. It just says that the EU and the UK will consider alternative solutions to the Irish border issue, including potential technical solutions. The Prime Minister has offered to sit down with us and look at what those technical solutions might look like, and we're very happy to do that. But I think the sooner we do that, the better.
What do you want to happen next? Because Theresa May is adamant that you will not be able to get a better deal. This isn't about negotiation. This is the deal. It's this or nothing. Why won't you compromise?
Well, it is about negotiation, and the negotiation continues. There's a long way to go on this. The withdrawal agreement's the first phase of a lengthy negotiation to develop our future relationship with the European Union. So if anyone believes this is the end of the road, that we're in the last chance saloon, well, I don't think they understand the process at all.
And if Theresa May doesn't get this deal past Parliament, which at the moment, let's be honest, is looking unlikely, that could risk a government collapsing and another general election. Are you willing to take that risk?
Well, if that's the outcome, so be it. Parliament decided that it would have a meaningful vote on the Brexit deal, and now we will have that meaningful vote. And if the draft deal that's on the table is voted down, then I think the Prime Minister should go back to Brussels and seek further change to the withdrawal agreement. That seems to me the sensible way forward. But if the Prime Minister decides to go to the country, that is a matter for her. Frankly, here in Northern Ireland, the Democratic Unionist Party isn't put off by the notion that we would fight an election on the basis that we want the best deal for the Union, the best deal for the United Kingdom, and the best deal for our economy. And this, at the moment, doesn't represent what we believe is the best deal.
But realistically, what do you think you are going to get? What do you think Theresa May can get at this stage?
Well, I do think we need to explore those alternative options that she spoke of in the House of Commons on Wednesday and that are outlined in the political declaration. We need to drill down into that and see what they look like, because the so-called backstop is unacceptable, not just to us, but to many MPs across the political divide in the House of Commons. I think it is the major obstacle now to agreement with the European Union.
Philip Hammond, the Chancellor, arrived. He's attending the conference. He arrived last night, gave a speech. He says the government's looking at ways to give the Democratic Unionist Party extra assurances. Are you convinced by what he said last night?
Well, I think the Chancellor made a very good speech last night, but we haven't yet been convinced that the backstop is necessary. We don't believe it is, and we believe that in its current form it is unacceptable. That remains our position.
Northern Irish business leaders are behind Theresa May's deal. The Ulster Farmers Union have even called on the DUP to support it. Does that mean you are out of touch with them and what they want and businesses in Northern Ireland?
Well, we respect their position. They're entitled to their viewpoint. We hold a different view, and we're speaking for the people who gave us a mandate to go to Westminster and get the best deal for Northern Ireland. We don't believe that what's on the table is the best that we can get, which is why we want to see some changes.
Geoffrey Donaldson, thank you very much for joining us on Breakfast this morning.
Time is exactly 9:15. Let's have a look through the round window. And that's what it looks like outside our building this morning here in Salford. A little bit overcast. Stav, what's the picture across the rest of the UK?
That's a lovely photograph, isn't it, Tina and Charlie? I know that western areas will see the best of the sunshine today. We've got an easterly wind, and that's feeding in quite a lot of cold air again to our shore. So this weekend is going to be a chilly one once again, and mostly dry. The best of the sunshine in the west, but there is some rain around, and it's affecting southern England at the moment. But we've got clearing skies as well across parts of Lancashire. The sunshine's coming through there. Excuse me. And southern areas, though, plagued by this area of low pressure. Now, this weather front brought a lot of rain to the southwest of England yesterday, some thunder and lightning as well mixed in. So it's going to be quite damp here through the morning. Some of that rain pushing a bit further north as well. The London area pretty damp at the moment with some rain, but I think the heaviest of the rain will keep to the south of the M4 corridor throughout the afternoon. So some of that rain pushing a little bit further northwards, like I mentioned, into the Midlands, but it's going to feel colder, 7 or 8 degrees at best. Yesterday we saw temperatures touching 10, 11 Celsius, so it is a bit cooler. That cool air feeding down on that east-northeast wind. A few showers into eastern Scotland, eastern England, but northwest England, western Wales, parts of western Scotland, and also for Northern Ireland should see the best of the sunshine throughout the day, but again it will feel cool. This evening it stays quite damp across the south, but it looks like the rain will begin to peter out and become more confined to the Channel. So I think the Channel Islands look pretty wet through the overnight period, but for much of the country largely dry, variable cloud. Temperatures down to 3 or 4 degrees, but lower than that where you get any clear spells like we saw this morning across western Scotland. Cold air still with us for Sunday on that brisk easterly wind, so it's going to feel quite raw once again. Misty, murky conditions with showers eastern Scotland and eastern England. I think it looks a bit better, though, for southern parts of the country. We've lost that weather front, so it should be a bit dry here. There is a chance of some rain just returning a bit further northwards again into the southeast of England throughout Sunday afternoon. Best of the sunshine, central western areas with temperatures on the cool side, maybe even a touch cooler than today. Monday's the last of these cool, quiet, fairly cloudy days. Again, we could see just a few showers across the northeast. Otherwise, most places will be dry. Quite a bit of cloud around, just a bit of sunshine here and there, temperatures in single figures. But the first signs of the change taking place across the southwest with increasing winds and outbreaks of rain. So as we head deeper on into the week, those southwesterlies move right across the country. Very strong winds, in fact, gales or severe gales at times, feeding in this mild air to our shores with outbreaks of rain. So it looks like Tuesday will start to turn wetter across western areas, the wind picking up too. By Wednesday it'll be very windy with gales, severe gales across western parts. Heavy rain, but also some sunshine around. And notice the temperatures were in double figures for many of us. So it is turning milder as we head deeper on into the week. Charlie and Tina.
Welcome news. Stav, thank you very much.
Thanks, Stav. 18 minutes past 9 is the time now. We're going to have a look at the newspapers now. Our guest this morning, former Chief Executive of the Football Association, David Davis, having a look through some of the inside pages. Your whole thing, so much about sport. I just wanted to mention Ian Robertson, who we're going to talk to in about 40 minutes' time.
Marvellous.
It's his last commentary on the rugby today, having done the World Cup, of course, the England win in 2003. 50 years of commentating. We sometimes forget how important commentators are to sport, don't we?
Oh, legendary commentators. And Ian, of course, was the last of an era in the view of some of us who have huge affection for that era. I was lucky enough. The day Ian joined BBC Radio Sport was the same day I went to BBC Radio Sport as a trainee. With on an attachment, as the BBC always calls it, still, I think. And you knew then Ian was a lovely man and also a great humorist. And in my view, didn't quite look like a rugby player, which he had been, a distinguished rugby player as well. And the fact that the peak of his career, I'm sure he'll say this, was that moment when Johnny Wilkinson drop-kicked the World Cup and won the World Cup for us. I mean, to have been there and to have had that moment in your career.
Yeah, it's what all commentators wouldn't they? So you've had a look through some of the papers. Where are you going to start us?
Well, I'm going to start in the Telegraph. And now I have to declare an interest. I'm on the council of the University of Birmingham. But, I mean, what is the future of paying for our universities and our students and our research in those universities? There's talk of cutting fees, of course. There's talk of 2-year courses in recent times. But here we have the Russell Group of universities warning that unless, yes, you may cut fees if that's what the public demands, but who is going to fill that gap? And they're warning, of course, of the science courses being cut, museums, which rely a lot on the universities, of course, facing closure. And the serious matter is there is a real chance in the next year or two that, as things stand at the moment, universities, whole universities, may close. Now that is quite a prospect for a country like ours, which is at the forefront of higher education.
Yes, but then if you look at this generation who are being asked to pay so much more in tuition fees, you know, I didn't pay tuition fees or pay very little. They were funded before, and students now are leaving university with tens of thousands of pounds worth of debt.
I totally agree with that, and therefore you have to sort out the funding on how you do it and going forward, because you know, if the aspiration of 50% of over 18s in higher education, which is always talked about as something to do with Tony Blair, it was not Tony Blair. I always remind people, as a former education correspondent, that it was Margaret Thatcher and the now Lord Baker, who that was their aspiration. And, you know, the other thing is we are relying hugely on our overseas students and the number of overseas students. Mind you, we are not encouraging our overseas students to come in the way that we once did.
Let's try and crack through a couple more stories. We had Tim Peake actually on the sofa in connection with this. It is worth talking about again, though, because this is the test. The test to be an astronaut.
Absolutely. I mean, if you've woken up this morning and thought, I'd like a job change, The Guardian has something for you. The European Space Agency is looking for new recruits as astronauts. And I mean, it's quite extraordinary. Of 8,000 or so people who applied several years ago for the class, only 8,000 applied, 918 got beyond the first test day, got to the first test day. And I mean, with mental arithmetic, working memory, pattern recognition, concentration and more, but they're relying more on soft skills as well.
How do you get on with people?
Are you a pain in the neck?
Yeah.
Wants that in space.
Yeah,
I have no idea.
Stuck with each other
that
up
sort
there.
of person.
Next story from the Express. Maybe we'll finish on this one. This is about who argues most. Is that right?
Argues? Yes. Good news for the oldies at last. Couples, 42% of married Britons row at least once a day, but less so after they turn 45. And so, isn't that good news? It's wonderful that as you get older, you row less.
You just can't be bothered.
Well, therefore
just let it go.
So much over the years. What they argue about? Wash the old things, washing the dishes, tidying up, putting the bins out. And a few people talk about money, of course.
And dare I ask, how does this reflect in the Davis?
No, I thought you might do that. I think that's something of an intrusion on private grief.
So I'll take back that question.
Your glasses have come off for that one.
He's taking it very seriously. 45, is that the new definition of middle-aged? Is that always been 45?
After they turn 45.
Well, I always think it is still a state of mind. I mean, I can remember feeling like I was 80 on certain days at the FA, to be honest. But these days, now that I'm a little bit older again, you know, you do think, oh, you still consider yourself as you were all those years ago, those halcyon days gone by. I've just remembered what we do disagree about.
Go on.
You don't have to.
It is putting the bins out.
Yeah.
Is it? It is. That's our main
thing. Who wins?
I win. Yeah, because
it's not a question of winning and losing.
No, it's not.
That's the language of dispute, isn't it?
Absolutely. We've got over that after 41 years. We've worked that out.
So you put the bins out.
I do it as well. Yeah.
Lovely to see you this morning.
Thank you. This is Breakfast. We are on BBC One until 10 o'clock this morning when Matt Temmett takes over in the Saturday Kitchen.
First, though, just coming up to 9:30, a summary of this morning's main news. Theresa May is heading to Brussels to attempt to finalise her Brexit deal with EU leaders.
The Prime Minister is hoping the plans, which include details on our future relationship with the European Union, will be approved at a summit on Sunday. But Spain's Prime Minister has threatened to derail the timetable if he doesn't get further reassurances over the status of Gibraltar.
Meanwhile, the leader of the Democratic Unionist Party, Arlene Foster, is expected to reiterate her opposition to the proposed Brexit deal when she addresses its annual conference today. The DUP is concerned that plans to prevent checks on the Irish border would leave Northern Ireland too closely tied to the EU. Earlier, Sir Geoffrey Donaldson, DUP MP in Westminster, the party's chief whip, told us there's still plenty of time to make changes.
The Home Office is investigating how an adult asylum seeker was allowed to take up a place at a school in Ipswich. The man, who was posing as a 15-year-old, enrolled at Stoke High School. It's believed he may be as old as 30 and could now face deportation.
A police officer has been stabbed in East London. British Transport Police said the male officer was attacked with a knife outside Ilford train station. His injuries are not thought to be life-threatening.
Climate change will cost the US hundreds of billions of dollars by the end of the century. That's according to a major government report. The White House has dismissed the findings as inaccurate, but scientists are calling for drastic action to be taken to cut carbon emissions.
Early reports show Black Friday's spending has fallen compared to last year, even though there were more transactions overall. Barclaycard, which is responsible for processing nearly half of all UK debit and credit card transactions, said it had seen a 12% drop in the total spent compared to the same period 12 months ago.
A new nasal swab test for flu, which can give a diagnosis in just 20 minutes, has helped to significantly reduce bed blocking and unnecessary admissions in hospitals. It was used in trials at 2 hospital trusts in Norwich and South London and avoids the need to put patients in isolation. Other flu tests can take several days to return results.
And if you are familiar with this sound, it is, of course, Mike, the Lion King.
Yes, it's not a fan shouting Arsene Wenger, as someone has said on social media.
It's not that. It's not that. And the reason we're playing that is because you'll see this now. This is the trailer for the live-action retelling of the classic Disney film. It's been released. It's already had 21 million views, apparently, in just 24 hours. Due to hit cinemas next summer, and a cast including Beyonce will be in it, but it does look beautiful, doesn't it?
Can't wait.
Absolutely stunning. And now, these days, you realise that that line between animation and reality is gone, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because animation can look exactly like reality.
So that's next year?
Thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, look forward to that. A rousing cry, though, isn't it, getting us going in the morning? It'd be great before one of the autumn internationals this afternoon. The last ones of the series, of the season. Some fantastic games, starting off with Scotland, Argentina on BBC One at 2:30. Then you've got England, Australia, Wales against South Africa, Ireland taking on the USA later on as well. And a real chance for these teams to make their mark ahead of the World Cup. And actually, on the evidence so far this autumn, the teams, the Northern Hemisphere, are a lot closer than have been in the past, the Southern Hemisphere, which sets us up for what could be a fantastic World Cup next autumn. So, for one last time this autumn, the North takes on the South. Get ready for the earth to rumble under all those challenges. And with the World Cup coming up next autumn, this is a chance for those teams to really set out their stall, especially Wales. Top snow sport nation by the time we reach the Winter Olympics in 2030. What do you reckon?
Can we?
Top 5?
You tell us.
There's growing evidence that it can happen. It's the plan that's been set out for quite a while now by GB Snow Sports. This week they gave more details about this plan. Many GB athletes, you know, are known as the fridge kids, taking on the world because they learn on indoor ski slopes, like the one I went to in Castleford this week to meet one of the country's top medal hopes on the road to recovery.
Back from the brink. From Olympic dream to learning to walk again. And 9 months after, freestyle snowboarder Katie Ormerod broke her heel in 2 places on the opening day of the Winter Olympics, her year from hell was finally over as she stepped back onto snow at her local indoor slope in Yorkshire.
I mean, it actually feels amazing just to be back here, especially because I spent most of my childhood snowboarding here, and Yeah, it makes me just excited to get back on my snowboard again. It has been really difficult, especially because, you know, it was such a bad injury and I had to go through so many operations and, you know, I wasn't really prepared for all of that, and the rehab was difficult. Learning to walk again was really tough, so I just had to push through the pain.
Katie now hopes to be back on her board early next year.
Well, Katie's story, written on indoor ski slopes like this, that's why the sports governing body is so confident that Great Britain can be a top 5 alpine nation by 2030.
At the moment, we've got a lot more incredible GB snow sports athletes than anybody realises. We've had so many different podiums in so many different disciplines. A lot more kids are now getting into like skateboarding, BMXing, inline skating. These kids can learn a lot of these tricks there, and then we can bring them onto the snow and help develop them that way. And like I said, we've got to be thinking more in that direction in GB, because we're not born in the mountains.
Well, success at the top has to be matched by growth at grassroots. And you know, as I approach my first ever jump, it's never too late to teach an old dog new tricks. Hey, he's over!
Like some key things, just keep your legs bent and your head up and you'll be fine.
Sometimes on the international scene, British skiers are seen as fridge kids, because, you know, we come from areas like this. We don't come from a massive mountain, you know, in Switzerland. We use areas like this, but we're still able to compete with the best people in the world.
If you can't afford to go away, you can still ski in the UK and have a good time and ski with everyone. Yeah.
I learned all my rail tricks here, and when I was younger I was one of the best rail riders in the world at a really young age, because I just came here every week and it's such a consistent run and they've got rails all the time, so yeah, it's great. You don't have to go to the mountains, you can just come here.
British hopes were further boosted this week by the defection of snowboard cross World Cup star Charlotte Banks from the French team to the country of her birth, which shows the confidence in the direction that Britain's united skiers and snowboarders are heading.
So Charlotte becomes the latest fridge kid. Could do well.
Skills from you as well.
Well, no, I look back on those pictures now, and that rail at the time, it felt like, whoa, I'm actually doing a rail. But I look back and it was rather pathetic looking, wasn't it?
Very well. And now, do you think that in sport, commentators sometimes get overlooked?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, as a kid, especially growing up, when you listen on the radio at night, in bed, whatever, some of the names from the past, I'm thinking about Peter O'Sullivan, Peter Jones in football, and obviously in rugby union, there's only one name that's, for me, still synonymous with rugby union, the great Ian Robertson.
Yes, we're going
Funny enough.
Yeah, we're going to talk to Ian Robertson in just a second, because today, very important day for him. He's going to be commentating on his last match, Rugby International. That's England-Australia, of course.
Yes.
This afternoon. It's going to be a great moment, and many people will remember 2003, England against Australia, the Johnny Wilkinson drop goal that won them the World Cup. Let's listen once again.
Martin Johnson has it. He drives. There's 35 seconds to go. This is the one. It's coming back for Johnny Wilkinson. He drops for World Cup glory. It's up. It's over. He's done it. Johnny Wilkinson is England's hero yet again. And there's no time for Australia to come back. England have just won the World Cup.
Well, Ian joins us now from North London. Ian, it's the contrast between that moment and the excitement in your voice and that extraordinary moment with the calm of your home there is quite extraordinary. Can you give us a little insight into that moment in time, what it was like for you in that ground, England winning the World Cup?
They'd had a build-up of a couple of rucks and mauls just before that, and I thought then he might go for a drop kick, but he didn't. They got into the perfect position. I did have one horrific moment, because all his drop goals for England had been with his left foot. He's left-footed primarily, and this was suddenly on his right foot. But it soared over, and it was the final big moment of the game and of a great international, and England became the only nation so far from the Northern Hemisphere to win the World Cup, and it was just a fabulous moment. Commentators, all they need is a great match, and then you can do a great commentary.
And also that one line that stays with you forever. Wherever you go now, do people still say it to you?
No, there's a mixture of jocularity at Twickenham because I am Scottish, and but it was just a great tournament, and the final bit was just absolutely devastating for the Australians, and here they are again. It's a reprise of the one good commentary I've done in 47 years.
Which is rather fitting, isn't it, that it's your last commentary? And do you at all think about what you will say come the end of the match, the end of your commentary? Have you thought about, whichever way it goes, have you thought about a final line, or does it just come instinctively? Because it must be emotional.
Yeah, it's what I learnt from Peter Bromley, the racing correspondent of radio. He said that doing a commentary on a live sporting event is the last of the great ad-lib shows, and that's what it is. You just look at the match going on, whatever the contest is, and you describe it, and it is the last of the ad-libs. You can't prepare for it, you can just prepare for a great game. If it's a great game, it's much easier to do a good commentary.
Ian, your career has been remarkable, 47 years. What will you miss the most?
I think commentary above all, that's the highlight for me, but also the camaraderie of the press corps, who we hunt as a pack all over the world, and trips to Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, Argentina regularly, the Six Nations Championship primarily, and that will all disappear. But I've had a great run. I've loved every single minute of it, and I'm just very happy that I've got one last go to have a bash at England-Australia, which is a huge, huge sporting rivalry.
Now, Ian, so much has changed in rugby in the time that you've been watching and commentating on it. It's gone from amateur to professional, of course. We have huge stars in the game now who are paid a lot of money. Is there a bit of you that harks back to a time when, I don't know, maybe you were close to the players, maybe you went drinking with them? There was a very different kind of culture maybe in that space of time.
Yes, going for a drink with them nowadays is not off the books. That still happens, and the rugby players are great. They interact with the press, and it's two different eras. The amateur era was fantastic, and that's when I played. And it was 50 years ago I got my first cap for Scotland, and a lot has changed, but above all, going professional, the players are bigger, stronger, fitter, faster, the game's tougher, rougher, but the ethos of rugby hasn't changed at all.
You have some incredible stories. I know you've interviewed Nelson Mandela, and you ended up staying in Elizabeth Taylor's house for a week. How did both of those things end up happening?
I was just very lucky. I was friendly with Francois Pienaar and the coach of South Africa in 1995, Kitch Christie. And they introduced me to Nelson Mandela, and he took part quite regularly during that 5-week, 6-week tournament. And I was just very lucky that I met him, and I've stayed great friends with Francois Pienaar. So I was very lucky. Elizabeth Taylor was writing a biography of Richard Burton, the actor, because his brother Graham Jenkins worked for the BBC, and we went and spent a week. And Elizabeth Taylor wrote the foreword to the book, and we visited her house, and we had a common theme there, our house in Los Angeles. It had lots of little dogs. I have one big Rottweiler, and then the Christmases that followed, she sent pictures of her little Dachshunds, and I sent a picture each year of my Rottweiler.
Oh, that's amazing. And there's one other high-profile person I want to ask you about, because you've done so many things in your career. You taught as well. Is it true that you taught Tony Blair?
Yes, he very, very kindly led off a little tribute on Radio 5 Live, where he talked in glowing terms, making me out to be a far better teacher and nicer person than I actually was. And this interview was done by Matt Dawson. When it finished, I said, was that really Tony Blair? I think it was Rory Bremner, wasn't it?
More importantly, what was he like as a student?
Yes. Oh no, he was far cleverer than me, so that was really annoying. But he was very bright. Sailed off into Oxford and then on to bigger and better things. But he played fly half, but I coached the first and second 15s at Fetties, and he was just below that in the third 15, so I didn't actually have the chance to shout and yell at him.
Well, Ian, it's been lovely talking to you this morning. Enjoy your day. I'm sure it will be an emotional moment for you, and many people will thank you for all the wonderful commentaries over the years. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Ian. We'll be glued to it this afternoon.
Thank you.